I'd say so. It's worked out really well, and it's allowed me to be creative. It's allowed me to experience the American dream, which is, one of the big American dreams, is starting a business and growing a business and figuring out how to make it fly. And we've done that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer, and this is episode number 43. Joining me is composer and music publisher Walter Cummings. Before we begin, I'd like to thank all of you for listening and for your support. I'd like to ask if you can help me in a couple of ways. I rely on word of mouth to spread the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Now, on to the episode. Hi, Walter.
Good afternoon, Mark.
So, how are you today, Walter?
Having a good day. It's January 2nd, and it's beautiful out here in western Colorado. I can't complain.
Is it cold?
Not very cold for this time of year. No, it's the people that are complaining, the ski area owners and skiers such as myself. There's no skiing out here really this year, but hopefully the season will get better. But we're all about skiing out here in Colorado.
Yeah, well, to place it for the rest of us in the country, we're in a deep freeze. I'm in St. Louis, and we're in single digits today.
Okay, well, we're in mid to high 40s.
Oh, my goodness, I'm jealous. All right, Walter, could you start by telling the listeners about yourself?
Okay, I am a publisher of band music, have been doing so for 25 years, the owner of Grand Mesa Music Publishers. I wasn't always a publisher. I started out as a band director back in Mississippi, back in the mid, then late 70s. I came from Mississippi originally. I was in band programs in high school. And actually, it was in a very, very top band program that played wonderful band music. So that was a bit of an early inspiration. Some of the listeners might have heard of Dr. Sidney McKay, who ended up at the University of Memphis, but he was my high school band director. And the guy loved music. He knew his music, and he got his students really fired up about it. So I came from a really great high school band program. We weren't too much into marching band, but we were all about fantastic concert band music. So that's my background, and that was a major inspiration, I would say, back in the day in Mississippi. My early career was in some small schools in Mississippi. I built a couple of programs pretty much from ground up and ended up making some good music with my kiddos. I taught my first 14 years in Mississippi, actually. And finally migrated out to Colorado to work on my doctorate in conducting at the University of Northern Colorado. So I made the switch in Mississippi to Colorado back in the mid-'80s, actually. Taught for a year in New Hampshire, Plymouth State College, and ended up back in Colorado teaching middle school band, East Middle School in Grand Junction. And from there, got inspired to become a publisher because I wasn't happy with the quality of the band music I was finding as a middle school band director. Started writing for my own groups and ended up parlaying my writing into a publishing career. So mainly because I was having trouble getting my own things published and shopping my music around and not getting many takers, so ended up doing it myself. And starting out with my own music, my first year in publishing was 1992. And basically that year was all about me. All the tunes were mine. I had 12 of my own tunes. The second year got Kenneth Singleton on board, who's a wonderful transcriber and arranger. And from there, became less and less about other writers. More and more about other writers and less about myself. To the point I rarely ever publish anything by myself anymore because don't really have a whole lot of writing time because I'm busy editing, publishing, typesetting, promoting the music that we do. So that's basically my career arc, starting out as a band director, then into composing, and then finally into publishing for the bulk of my career. So that's a thumbnail sketch right there.
Wow, you've done a lot of different things in that career. Can I ask you a few questions about that?
You betcha, Mark, please.
Okay, so you mentioned that you grew up in Mississippi. Were your parents musical?
My mother was a church pianist and organist, and she encouraged my music a lot. My dad was in football. He really wanted me to play football. When I didn't play football, it was not a pretty thing in our household, but my mother prevailed, and she bought me a trombone, so I got into band. But and he didn't know he was a musician, but late in life, it became a church choir bass, and he was wonderful. But he had no idea as a kid. It was all about athletics and farming. But my mother loved the music, still does, still plays piano for various churches at the age of 87.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's lifetime music. That's what we're trying to get to, right?
Absolutely.
Where'd you go to school for your undergraduate?
That was Southern Mississippi, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I played in the bands of Dr. Joe Barry Mullins. He was quite a well-known wind band conductor. And I suspect a few of your listeners know about him and may have even played under him. Wonderful guy.
So do you have any lessons that you learned from Dr. McKay or Dr. Mullins that you used as a teacher?
I think it's to totally get immersed in what you do. And that is a band director's life. You're spending all your time and energy being a band director. And perhaps but those guys should have been a more well-rounded people, but they were way into band. I think that's what it takes to be successful at, is immerse your life in it. And the sheer enjoyment of music, it's such a powerful thing. So, and a beautiful thing. So I'd say that the number one lesson for most gentlemen was immerse yourself in it.
One of the questions that Mary Land, who was a guest a few episodes ago, asked me to start asking was about work-life balance. So do you have thoughts on that? If you're so immersed as a band director, how do we find work-life balance in our careers as musicians?
I think that's a pretty tough thing, but I think you grab the times when you can and do something totally unrelated, I suspect. Athletics, getting out and enjoy the outdoors. And I personally have really been able to enjoy that a lot as a Coloradan, because we have so much outdoors to enjoy, and it is so amazing. But I think you need to find something else you like, totally unrelated to music, and go after that with the gusto as well. And what little bit of time you might have outside of band directing. So just a total escape from what you do. But when you do it, you've got to go for it with all your soul.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Doing the professional part of it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that after Northern Colorado, you taught at Plymouth State, because I interviewed Mark Stickney, who's the current band director at Plymouth State.
Yes, he is. So
what attracted you to Northern Colorado?
That school, well, they have a doctorate in conducting. There weren't too many at the time, and specifically a Doctor of Arts. And I wanted to get back to Colorado. I'd been there in the mid-'70s. I was a master's student in music education at the University of Colorado in Boulder. My intent was to stay in Colorado at that time, but had no luck getting employed, and ended up going back to Mississippi and spending the next couple of decades there. But it was a chance to get back to Colorado, and a chance to go to school with a doctorate in conducting. And at that point in my life, I thought I wanted to pursue higher education and get a job as a college band director. And that was what I was chasing at that point, and ended up at UNC Greeley. But that ended up leading all sorts of different directions that I didn't expect, but they became happy things in my life, including meeting my wife there in Greeley, Janet Cummings, former Janet Brown. She was a freshman horn player when I was working on my doctorate. Janet and I ended up making a wonderful life together as a publishing family.
Sure. So let's talk about the transition that you made from college band director to composer / music publisher. When did you start writing music?
Basically started when I was teaching middle school. That was after my time at Plymouth State College. And I was kind of disappointed, somewhat in myself, and that I wasn't still pursuing the college band directing dream, but it seemed to be not a realistic dream for me, as I think don't really have the personality for that. I'm being more of a behind-the-scenes guy and a collaborator, and not necessarily a leader, which is, I think it takes quite the leadership quality to be a successful band director, especially at the higher levels, the higher education levels. And I think I discovered that really wasn't my thing, and I was looking around for another niche in music. So I decided to try an area I had not tried before, and that was middle school band directing. And that was interesting and fun, and it kind of got me into the idea that I could write middle school band music that was intelligent and interesting, and had something to offer the field as a writer rather than necessarily a conductor. I enjoy composition, and it's something I sort of reinvented myself to do. But as far as any composition degree or lessons, very little in the way of that formal training. I think as a listener, I've trained myself in trial and error, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, I can't talk. But now I'm basically a self-taught composer and self-taught publisher, as a matter of fact. So it's just something that interested me that I reached out and started doing and reinvented myself as a composer-publisher.
What's emerging as I talk to you is your flexibility and your willingness throughout your career to take risks and to change directions when you needed to. I find that really inspiring, actually.
Oh, well, thank you. I would say I am a risk taker. I'm not averse to that. I'm not averse to failure. So I was willing to just jump out there and give it a try. The hard part was talking my wife into doing something wild and crazy like starting a publishing business. But she, after thinking about it a while, she was on board and said, "Let's go. Let's try it." And it seemed like a good thing for us, for our skill set. My wife, Janet, actually has a lot of skill in the accounting area, and our two skill sets blended together really nicely. She taking care of the business end of it, or the nuts and bolts part of the business, I should say, and me being the dreamer and coming up with some things that could fly, and figuring out what we might have to offer that wasn't already being covered in the band music world. And I think we have offered something interesting and unique, and a lot of people have found pleasure, and really a lot of professional inspiration by the music we put out there, by taking risk on unknown writers and writers who might be going in a different direction than most folks are going.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, Walter, what year did you actually, so it's the 25th anniversary, so that's 1992?
92 was the year, yes, sir. So actually, 2017 was the 25th anniversary. So now we're heading into our 26th year at this point, and very happy to still be around in the business and still having lots to offer the field, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to tell my listeners, just to be for full disclosure, that I have two pieces published with Walter's company. And so I do have a relationship with you prior to this interview, so people know that. So in 1992, you mentioned that it was 14, if I recall correctly, of your pieces. And then the next year you added some transcriptions by Ken Singleton. And so then from there, how did it grow? That's I mean, that's the magic to me, because it's such a tight business and such a difficult market.
Right. That it is. I think people were really kind of hungry for some different writers. The way the system works is it seems like most of the publishing companies keep writing the same writers over and over. And they are, in many cases, superb writers, and their name has a marquee value, and they're using not only the ability of the writers, but also the name the writers have established to sell the music. And my company doesn't really have that, but actually some of the writers now have developed names that we launched out into the big world of band music publishing. A lot of great writers have gotten their start with us. and they have since then branched out and are published by many larger publishers. But we're happy to still be around, doing what we've done for 26 years now. And I think we've had a lot to offer.
I remember being a young band director in the 90s. 1997 is my first year as a teacher. And I remember getting your catalog. And I remember looking at the branding and then looking at your messaging that you were putting out at that time. And it was, as you mentioned, it was very refreshing. It didn't seem like everything else. And that stood out to me even back then. And so what was the thought process behind that branding and those early messages?
I think we wanted to offer something unique and different. Why be a publisher if we were going to just go down the same paths again and do things the same way? So I searched high and low for interesting writers who interested me as a musician, and I think we ended up doing a good job. Back in those days, I went to a lot of stage shows. I spent a lot of time on the road, putting lots of miles on my cars, but going to stage shows, especially all over the West. I would say the Mississippi River eastward, for the most part, is where I went places. And was meeting guys here and there that really had something to say. And I started publishing mostly unknown writers, but people liked what we had to offer. A good example was Randall Standridge. I met him at the Arkansas show back in, I guess that was the early 2000s, actually, is when Randall got going with us. But I met him at the Arkansas show. He was a young Arkansas band director, not too long out of college. And he had a couple of charts he wanted me to have a look at. They were Fields of Clover and Pandora were the first two charts Randall showed me. When I met him at the Arkansas Bandmasters Summer Show back in, I want to say that was 2005 or 2006, possibly. But he got one of the pieces in, Fields of Clover. That was one of his first published works, the first one with us, and it still sells really well and super successful piece. The other piece is Pandora, and we didn't take it initially. And I offered Randall quite a shopping list of things that I would like him to take a second look at and try to develop more about that piece. And he came back with it a year later, and he had lots of things that I recommended fixed and happening, and that piece became a huge success for us. So a good example of being out there on the road, meeting people, and meeting the right person at the right time. So I think one of my mottos is you must be present to win. And I was present in a lot of situations and met lots of great writers that I saw some talent in and cultivated that and cultivated a really good relationship. And it has grown from there. Randall just being an example of a writer who's been very successful for us and also been successful in his career beyond Grand Mesa Publications. And he's doing great with lots of publishers out there now.
So this speaks to a couple of different things. One, you mentioned that you must be present to win, which means you were at these conferences meeting composers, but it also says something about the composers who approached you and their willingness to reach out and to make a connection.
Absolutely. Well, being, especially in the early years, as a super small publisher and not really much of a track record, they had to take chances too and take risks. And it was a risk for everybody, but we were having fun and I wasn't starving, so I was, I saw the positive movement and growth in the company from year after year. We were doubled for every year for a while, and I liked the direction it was moving. So even though I wasn't making that much money, I was encouraged and was having a good time. So we were full speed ahead, and for lots of years, and we haven't really slowed down since then. We've had nice growth every year.
Yeah, and so you once told me that you keep the catalog intentionally small. Every year you only release a certain number of pieces?
That's right. We do 80 minutes of music a year, which is what fits on a CD, as much of your listeners know, 80 minutes on a compact disc. Although I realize that the compact disc as a media is starting to lose favor, but it still seems like 80 minutes of music is a really good thing, whereby the pieces don't get lost within a large body of work every year. And I think each piece within a smaller release is more significant, more likely to get attention, and more likely not to get lost in just a whole flurry of pieces.
It's an interesting model. It's kind of the opposite of the large companies who are making their profits through volume. You're making your profits through a small catalog that you believe in. And I think that really, I think that speaks to people. I've spoken to a lot of different publishers and a lot of different composers and retailers, and they all speak very highly of Grand Mesa Music. And that's what they keep coming back to. Oh, you're with Grand Mesa. That's a great company. Everything in that catalog is good every year. And so I think you've done a remarkable job with that.
That was a goal to establish that type of reputation, but I see no reason to put out a piece of music just to have the volume. So we stick with the very best pieces we can find every year. It's been a good model, and I stand by it. I think we'll stick with that model forever and ever. I can't see doing more. I think I'm kind of a control freak, by the way, as an aside. I like doing pretty much everything myself. I do almost all the typesetting myself. I do most of the advertising ideas myself. And I work closely with subcontractors who do things for me, but most everything I do it myself, and I'm happy to do so, and seems to be working out. That way I can keep really tight reins on everything that happens, and things are less random. That works for my personality.
Have you ever been tempted to grow? Have you ever been tempted to double your music or your output? I'm just curious.
No, then I wouldn't do a good job. We do grow, but we grow by the same percentage every year. And we take on as many new projects as I feel like I can do effectively. And that 80 minutes of music has been a really great barometer. Something else it does is it allowed me to put full-length recordings on our CDs every year rather than just excerpt recordings. And that was a real pet peeve as a band director, the excerpt recordings, that there are too many hidden things, too many things that may, the slice that was not there, maybe part of the piece that wasn't as good, wasn't effective, might have had the oboe solo or something might be hiding there. So I never really trusted that. And I think it's more of a good listening experience, too. I think it's more likely that a band director is going to pop that CD in there if it's a full-length CD, and less frustrating listen. And I try to make those CDs really fun to listen to and have a nice flow every year, and have good variety, which I think we've achieved. And we certainly have a huge variety of writers and a variety of styles. And I think our CD is one of the more fun CDs in the field. Just sit down and have a good listen, or go someplace in your car and pop it in a CD player and really enjoy what's happening.
Yeah, I remember being the band director in the 90s before we had the internet, really. And that frustration of all those CDs you'd get and all those catalogs and trying to pour through all that stuff to figure out what to play. And so, as a band director in those days, it was just kind of go to the Pepper Editor's Choice list and look at the recommendations. But then there were the CDs like yours that were separate from that sort of stood out.
Right. We've never had that much on the Pepper Editor's Choice list, percentage-wise. I'm not quite sure why that is. I would think we would, but that's not really our thing. And we try to. I guess I'm kind of an independent cuss, so maybe I don't fit in as well in a system like that, but. And I'm really happy there are people out there who are independent enough to want to find out what's out there beyond what they're getting in the mainstream band print world. So it's all worked out nicely. Interesting aside, just something you reminded me of. I met a fellow from Ireland at the Midwest Clinic this year. And he came by and he said, well, I've never heard of this company. I gave him a CD, and he came by the next day and he said, man, am I ever glad I found you guys. This is amazing stuff, and we have no idea. I mean, what we get here in Ireland is Hal Leonard, some Alfred, and that's pretty much it. And it sure is not nice to find out that there's some small companies in the U.S., and he had discovered a couple other smaller companies too. He said, wow, this is so refreshing. It's so different than what we're hearing otherwise. And you guys have a new fan here in Ireland, so... He says I don't remember the fellow's name or where he's from, and I know their system is very different in Europe than the U.S. music education system. But Just a good example of somebody finding us and being pretty impressed, and not having found us through a mainstream music distribution. It's finding its way to Europe.
You mentioned Midwest Clinic, so I know you're there every year, and you're probably in the Colorado, the CMEA. But how much promotion do you do? How many conferences do you go to a year?
That number is way down from what it used to be, Mark. I spend lots more time in the office, and as the company has grown, the number of submissions I get has grown, and I spend a lot more of my percentage of time looking over submissions and replying to submissions, which is a huge part of what I do, and I love doing it. And I try to offer something to composers to submit things, something of value rather than just a form letter, which I saw lots of when I was a young composer trying to submit music to other publishers, and try to offer them something of value that they can possibly use down the road on another piece that might be worthwhile. So I spent a lot of time writing letters, and I don't remember how I got off on this. What was the original question? Sorry.
Oh, no.
What was it?
It was how many conferences you go to a year?
Oh, yes. How many conferences? Yes. I don't go to as many conferences as I used to, because I'm spending just so much more time in the office. But that number used to be, I want to say 15 conferences a year. I made sure I got to all the Texas conferences. I can just rattle them off. West Coast to East, I went to California every year, Nevada, Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Oklahoma. I went to Kansas one year, Nebraska every year, Iowa, but let's see, Arkansas, Mississippi, Midwest Clinic. I think I'm probably around a dozen there, maybe a little more than that. And that's pretty much it. And as a company, we've gone to more because Randall Standards has done some things in the East for us. He's been to Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, Alabama. So we've covered a lot of states. I think we're approaching 50% of the country state shows that we've been to. And it's how I built my business. But, once the business got there and a number of writers discovered me, I didn't really need to go out and beat the bushes quite as hard. So don't do that as much anymore. I still go to Montana, Nebraska, occasionally Mississippi, Colorado, do that one every year, occasionally Wyoming. Usually go to the Utah show every year, and that may be one I missed earlier in my list of shows I go to. But not nearly as much. But when I go, I really enjoy it. It's fun to get the feedback from the teachers that are out there using the music, and often hear some things I need to hear about how our music is working for them. And generally, it's pretty positive. But it's a good way to stay in touch with the teachers. And I think sometimes publishers maybe get a little out of touch because they're not out there enough, in my opinion. So that's been a good thing. But I don't need to do that as much as I used to, and I don't have the time as much these days either. But I still really enjoy it when I do get a chance to get out there. I like the trips and like touching base with guys out there actually using the music and out there doing the day-to-day thing with the kids and trying to inspire the kids. And I'm hoping to be a small part of the programs out there.
Yeah, sure.
And happy when I hear that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to kind of back up a little bit, I want to touch on a couple things. Now, I didn't talk about the expansion that you made. When did you add the string catalog to your company?
String catalog was in 2004, and that was something I felt like I finally got the band catalog going, and it seemed like it was a potential area of growth. And I was encouraged by that, encouraged in that direction by several string teachers that thought we should give it a try. They liked what we were doing on the band side. I think it was typically guys and women that were band directors and string teachers that knew about our band music and would like to see us make a foray into the string field. And I found the right person, Cameron Laws, a gentleman here in Grand Junction that teaches middle and high school strings. And he said he was willing to be our string editor and try to steer me in the right direction and do the editing on the pieces that came our way for a percentage of the profit, and which we still do. He gets 5% of the list price on every piece, but he does all the bowings, fingerings, everything, and advice. He knows the literature super well. He knows when a piece is already out there, when there's a good version of something that might have come to me, and that base has been covered out there, and we don't need to perhaps do the certain piece because there's already a really good example of that in the literature. So he knows what he's doing. I felt confident with the right editor on board. So that was in 2004, and so we've been doing the string thing for 14 years. We started out doing every other year string publishing because I didn't feel like I had time to do it every year. But once I got the feel for it and kind of got the system down, after a few years, we started doing it every year. We have a good recording situation, and I think we have quite a bit to offer the string teachers. And in the same area of refreshing, chance-taking type music that we put out there. And I'm real happy with what we've offered in the string catalog.
And now you added marching band a few years ago.
Marching band, that's right. The interesting story there. I do have a band editorial board that I've been meeting with from the beginning. It's also Kenneth Singleton in Northern Colorado and Richard Main in Northern Colorado on my board. And we meet twice a year and pick the music, and we discuss the state of the company, and they make suggestions on where we should go or what we should give a try. And that board was 100% opposed to adding marching band, interestingly enough. But I thought we had the right horse in Randall Standridge. Sorry to call you a horse, Randall, but you know what I mean. The right guy to start it. Randall was really anxious to get a marching band going and had a vision of what we could do and where we could differ ourselves from other companies that are doing a marching band. And turns out our niche is a smaller school, and we have mined that niche really well, and we're offering a lot to small schools in the area of shows that have a custom feel without having the price of a custom show. So I think we have been super successful in marching band, in spite of what my editorial board recommended. And the editorial board has since come around and said, okay, we noticed you didn't follow that advice, and perhaps it wasn't the best advice in the world. So I guess I'm sort of stubborn, but it worked out in spite of the fact that the editorial board advised against that. But it's been a really great thing for us. Randall is a fantastic editor, and we are picking up some great marching band music, and it's growing exponentially year to year. We started marching publishing in, I want to say that was 2014. I believe we're in the fourth year. This might be our fifth year, 2018. So I believe we must have started in 2013. But it's grown quite a large percentage every year. And we're played all over the place. And it's been amazing to watch that area of it grow. And that is the area of our largest growth these days, is in the marching field. And it's been a good thing. I see some crossover between our concert band music and the marching music, and I would say that both of those areas influence the other area of our catalog, and it's fun to see the crossover. I see some of Randall's melodic ideas from his concert band music taking shape in marching band in a really effective way. Many times, I'm not going to give all Randall's secrets out, but sometimes the concert band melodies, they show up in the marching band too. And some he freely admits, and others, only a few of us know that. But it's all good. And Randall was an incredibly inspired guy with a lot of ideas. So I think it's natural some of the ideas would cross over.
So now to kind of circle back, you talked about meeting Randall at Arkansas. Do you have any advice for a young composer or maybe a young band director who wants to start writing and maybe has a couple of pieces or a piece and they want to send it to you? What are you looking for from them?
They need to study the company and make sure what they have to offer is something that fits in that catalog. So they need to do their homework and make sure the catalog, it's the right place for them to go. I get some fairly clueless guys from time to time. Perhaps a guy has a country song. He goes online and he finds out that I have a publishing business. So the guy calls me, all excited about his country song he wants us to publish, but he hasn't done his homework. You need to make sure that what you have to offer actually does fit the catalog and it is what the publisher is looking for. Other advice, you need to get the best possible recording you can figure out how to make. I think you need to cultivate relationships with the bands in your area and try to get people to play your music and then perhaps record your music. If you can, the very best way to present your music is to have a good live recording, if at all possible. You want to have a great-looking manuscript. I think the days of handwritten written manuscripts are pretty much done. So hopefully most of the guys out there hearing this are well-versed in Finale or perhaps Sibelius or into the other programs. My personal favorite is Finale, and we're a Finale house, but I can deal with Sibelius. So the Sibelius writers, that's fine. You send your Sibelius file. Second best is MIDI. I've learned how to listen to MIDI really well and try to hear the music that might be lurking there in those MIDI recordings. So the MIDI is okay, but you need to have a great-looking score that's clean. You need to have a really clean recording. I would say a good MIDI recording is better than a bad live recording. But if at all possible, cultivate those relationships with good bands in your area and try to get a really good live recording, if at all possible, that really shows your piece in its best light. And before you send anything, though, contact that publisher and make sure they're looking and open for submissions. In the case of Grand Mesa Publications, I'm always wide open to new writers and new submissions. And I promise any of your listeners who are listening that I do listen to every piece that comes my way, and I will write you a personal letter on how the piece strikes me. It may not be a long letter, but I'm going to let you know what I like about it and what I honestly do not like about it. If that be the case, or I might love everything about the piece, but you need to contact that publisher first before you send anything, just to make sure they're looking for what it is you have to offer. So that's my little pieces of advice there for people. You know, and a lot of times, hone your craft. You know, spend a lot of time listening. Figure out what is good music. You need to recognize what is good music, and then figure out what about that music makes it tick. What is unique about that what you're writing? What is unique about what you might like? And figure out, through your intuition and study, what makes good music, and try to create a good example of that and something that is unique to you. That is not just a rehash of something that's already happened. Just because you know how to work a Finale program doesn't mean you're a good writer. And you've got to do some study and some self-search and lots of practice too. One more thing comes to mind, and that is I've talked to Randall Sandridge a lot about why he is successful and how his system works. But Randall is constantly collecting ideas. He has quite hundreds of melodic ideas he's got in the bank, and he just writes down ideas, and he goes to that well and dredges out ideas that he might have written down a few years back, and revisits that, and creates yourself a bank of ideas that you can draw on. And then when you have if you have a commission or request for a piece, you want to start a new piece, and go to your well of melodic ideas that you've already got cached.
All right, Walter, how much writing are you doing now?
Not very much. I do have a commission, though, coming up I'm excited about. I'm going to write in March that is written for the gentleman who opened up a middle school. I believe it's a middle school, might be a junior high in Fort Collins, Colorado. Who's a gentleman who played a big role in World War II. And he was actually saved a lot of people, and he earned the Silver Star, the military honorable Silver Star. So it's going to be called the Silver Star March. So my next project is a march, the Silver Star. I'm just getting rolling on that and just starting to peck around on some ideas. I don't have a cache of ideas, so I got to start over on this. But I would like to write more. I have got myself so busy. Now, we mentioned earlier in the interview about having a balanced life, and I do spend a lot of time in the outdoors in Colorado and recreating myself and not spending all my time doing publishing tasks. So that is super important to me, and I don't really have time to be much of a writer these days and keep up with everything I have to do as a publisher. So the writing is going by the wayside for me, but fortunately for me as a publisher, there's lots of fantastic writers who keep sending music my way. I'm one of the luckiest guys around. I open up my email and here's a phenomenal piece. I mean, how cool is that? But so I don't have to write so much. In the beginning, I did have to write just to have anything to publish. But it quickly became not about me and about the other writers, and me being more of an advisory role and an editorial role and a collaboration role where I work with a composer to get the piece to be the best it can be, which is an exciting thing to me.
What are the challenges that we're facing in music education? How do you think we best meet them?
I think it's a little tough to compete with video games. I have a 14-year-old son, and I know what he's into. His default is go into the basement and play video games. And we require him to do other things to earn his video game time. But I think about his band program. He's in an 8-9 school in Fruita, Colorado, and ninth graders are allowed to be in marching band. And his band director has done a phenomenal job of getting him totally involved in that band program. Or both his band directors, actually, his 8-9 band director and a high school marching band director is an inspiring guy, and he's got my kid. When he's on that marching field, he's totally all about it. He doesn't mind spending all day Saturday practicing because he's fired up about the band. So I think we have to make band really fun and make kids want to get beyond video games or whatever to pursue that. And they realize that I think kids deep down can feel the value and the power of music.
Do you have any thoughts about how?
I think part of it is magic. I think the right guys teaching, it's really key. You have to have the right personality. You have to love music and you have to love the kids. That's two things that are super important. I personally, when I was teaching, I think I wasn't as into the kids' needs as much as the needs of the music, and that was the wrong approach. And I don't think I was the most successful band director in the world, and I think I did the correct thing, changing the directions in my career.
Yeah, but you needed that experience.
But as far as
I
needed that experience to make this whole thing happen. That's true. You're totally right about that. But it's an incredibly challenging job. My hats are off to guys that do a good job and inspire the kids to want to spend their time doing music. And I keep hoping the rewards are there for the right people to be in the field, because it's a tough job, but it's amazingly rewarding. And it's such a phenomenal thing for kids to be involved with. It opens up the brain. It opens up their life experience. It was amazing for me as a kid growing up. I grew up in the cotton fields in Mississippi, and it was kind of a dreary place to be, but my music experience was magic. It took me out of those cotton fields into amazing places. So thank you, Dr. McKay, back in those years that you helped me see there's something beyond picking cotton and working on the farm, which is what I did growing up.
As I mentioned earlier, what I've noticed through this whole interview is your ability to change and your ability to adapt. Do you have any advice for your younger self if you could go back and tell the Walter who was just starting out in music, do this instead? Is there something like that you can think of? I
think I should have been, as a band director, I should have been more student-oriented and less subject-oriented. I needed to understand what made the kids click better, and I needed to try to motivate them better. And I think that was missing in me as a band director. I wish I could have done a better job for those kids, but I still have plenty of people say they just love being in my groups, and they could tell I was excited about music and I was excited about what I did, so that they therefore were excited. I'm trying to, I think I enjoyed those years, and I don't think I screwed up too bad. Hopefully I didn't warp anybody for life or whatever. But No, it was a good thing. It all had to come to, it was all part of your path in life, and that was my path. And I did that for a while, and it basically led to a publishing thing that turned out to be a fantastic thing. And I think I would say I did enjoy myself back in those years, but I could have been more inspiring, and I think I could have been better for the kids. I should have considered their needs more so than mine, and more than the music's needs, because the bottom line is you do it for the kids. So there's my advice for my younger self.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty good advice.
Can we add a little addendum to that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I tend to be too independent and too stubborn, and I should have been more open to mentoring. I really should have set myself up with a master teacher and learned that way. I think I'm more of a trial and error person and really independent, but I think I would tell my younger self, get in a great program and study, learn from a fantastic master that you're teaching under, and help that person and pick their brain. And I was always very independent in my teaching career, but I could have used more mentoring and listened to a particular mentor as a teacher. So that's my added 2 cents to that question.
If you could plan it out, what would be the final work that you would either conduct or listen to or hear?
I think it would be Elsa's procession to the cathedral, because that is like an ascension to heaven, and that is a heavenly piece of music. I think that would be an ultimate final piece right there. That would be a really good place to leave it.
That's a great answer. So how can people get in touch with you, Walter?
Walter Cummings 39 at gmail.com.
All right. So if they have some music they want to send or questions about the company, that's where they should reach out.
Yes, sir.
All right, Walter.
By all means. And I am happy to talk to anybody and happy to look at anybody's music.
Walter, I appreciate you and what you're doing, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Mark, it's been a great time. Thanks for having me.